Hello, and welcome to a virtual organ crawl of the 1897 Hook Hastings organ at St. John's Episcopal Church in Versailles, Kentucky. My name is Owen Sammons. I am the organist and choir master at St. John's, and I'll be your host for the rest of the video. So let's begin our tour where it would begin if you were actually in the church. Perhaps the most imposing part of the organ at St. John's is the facade itself. The facade pipes are rather tall and set up on the case, and the console is located immediately below the facade. The facade pipes at St. John's are not out of the ordinary for an organ built at the time. They are stenciled with a beautiful gold leaf and gold paint. And some of the organs at the time built had quite elaborate stenciling, and this, of course, is a carryover from the English tradition of organ building, where pipes were stenciled quite elaborately, sometimes to the point of not being able to recognize them as pipes themselves. So if you will, step back for a moment in history to 1895. The Hook Hastings firm is based in Boston, Massachusetts, and it is a direct descendant of English organ building. However, with some modifications throughout history, and you can see in these accompanying photographs that the English organ, originally in the Willis style, completely encased, or at least that's the style Willis inherited. And throughout a period of time, these organs gradually lost their cases, or the cases became very minimal, for a variety of reasons, until they were finally almost completely unencased. And as you can see from this example, this stone church with the organ unencased, perhaps in the case of a fire, there is very little to catch above the case itself, or above the bottom casing of the instrument. And at the same time, theoretically, this would allow for more sound aggression to be able to fill the space. So moving back to the facade of our instrument, what greets you are these very large pipes, and would almost lead you to believe that the majority of pipes behind this would be as large and imposing. This is not quite the case. When you strip away the facade pipes of our instrument, you'll find that the majority of the pipes are rather small and tightly packed, as a gardener would try to place plants, so that they can have the shortest plants or pipes closest to them to prune, and likewise for the tuner, having the pipes arranged this way makes it easier to tune. So when all pipes are removed, you're basically left with two wind chests, and these are individual chests that have through which the wind passes from the winding system up into the pipes, and so you'll see a great many holes drilled on each one where the pipes will sit. Our organ has two main wind chests. The one that is the loudest and sits closer to the organist is called the great wind chest, and the one that sits behind that is called the swell. And we'll talk about why it is called the swell in just a moment. But before we get to that, how this system works, very basically, is that the organist depresses the key, and through a connection of mechanical linkages, this opens a pallet, which allows wind to pass through a channel and then to speak through a pipe. Now, I know that seems daunting at the moment, but it is actually a very simple and completely mechanical system, as was typically employed at the time. So, with that in mind, what sits directly above this system are the pipes themselves, what you hear when you hear the organ at St. John's. So the first set of pipes, and the most prominent set, are the great pipes, and those sit immediately behind the facade. And then the second set, or the second division of the organ, which is equally important but has a different character, is called the swell. And the reason this is called a swell is because this set of pipes is actually encased in a box. And this box, as you can see from the illustration, has a set of shutters on the front, vertical shutters. And this is directly connected to a pedal that the organist can then utilize to open and shut, and therefore you have a volume control. Pipes themselves do not actually change volume. The wind pressure that they are given is meant to be pretty solid so that they speak at their most beautiful constantly. So the only way to control the volume is by this method of a swell box. So you have those pipes enclosed, so that is the second division. And then lastly, you have the pipes that are played through the pedals by the feet, and these are the bass pipes. And ours sit on the right hand side of the organ. You cannot actually see them unless you poke your head between the organ and the wall. And then what's fascinating is that these pipes are actually stenciled, just like the front pipes, and they actually have text on them. They say, "Let everything that hath breath praise the Lord." A typical verse from Psalm 150 that is featured on many organs of the time. And these pipes likewise have gold and are painted in gold. And the reason that these exist, or that they are stenciled at all, is because they were originally visible as the organ was turned 90 degrees, as you can see in this photograph, clockwise originally, and then somehow it was turned over time. But that would explain why those pipes are stenciled and placed in a place that is invisible. So, with all that in mind, you have your great pipes, your swell pipes enclosed in the box, and then your pedal pipes. Then add the front pipes, the facade pipes, that are part of the Great Division, and that is the pipe work of the Hook and Hastings at St. John's. Next, we look below the pipework, which I have briefly mentioned before, but to do so, you have to disrobe the organ a bit to see what's inside, and you are greeted with the wind system and the mechanical action. The wind system, as mentioned before, is powered by an electric blower, a air conditioner, if you will, of the time when electricity was first catching on. And this blower, which is positioned just outside the instrument, feeds the instrument with a modest amount of air, but then goes through a series of reservoirs to regulate that air. And as you can see here, when the organ is powered on, these bellows rise, and this reservoir rises, and if you can see that at the top are bricks, and these bricks are there to provide pressure against the wind itself and to provide regulation so that the wind going through the organ is not vastly different depending on how much it is being taxed or how many pipes are being played at once. All around the winding system are the trackers, the mechanical action system. And when someone says it's a tracker organ, all that simply means is that the inner workings of the instrument are controlled by these flat, long wood dowels. Here you can see the pedals being played, and you can see the dowels being activated in response. These trackers are located throughout the entire instrument, controlling every single key and stop, and even the swell box. There is a direct link between the pedal that the organist controls and the box itself. Now we move on to the console of the instrument, the brain center of the instrument, where the organist sits and controls all of the various controls and makes the magic happen. The first thing of interest to notice is what's called a coupler. And on this instrument, since everything is mechanical and directly linked, you can actually see when this coupler is employed that when you play notes on the bottom keyboard, they are played as well on the top. Another stop control links to the wood dowels behind it, and you can see the linkages and that directly open the pallets below the pipes to let air through. Our pedal board, where the feet play and connected to the bass pipes, is flat. This, although not terribly popular these days, would harken back to the way organs were originally constructed a little after Bach's day, but it is a fun pedal board nonetheless. There are 2 combination or preset pedals on the organ at St. John's that control individual stops, although these are permanently fixed, so all you can do is activate them, not change the stops they control. In 2015, there was also a Zimbelstern installed on the organ at St. John's. You will now hear a selection of stops from the St. John's organ. I would try to explain each one to you in great length, but we'd be here a while. So enjoy the sounds of the stops, and the names are also there for you. I'd like to thank you for joining me on this tour of the organ at St. John's. You're always welcome once things have resumed normality to come in and view the organ on your own. Perhaps you may not be able to play it, but it is visually a stunning instrument. And once things get going again, I would highly encourage you to come hear it in person, as it is quite an instrument to behold. Thank you very much.